Hello, this is a re-recording of the Publishing Vensim Models on Forio Epicenter webinar that was run on Wednesday, May 1st, 2019. My name is Michael Bean, and in this webinar today, what I'm going to do is cover several topics. I'm going to start by introducing Epicenter. So what is Forio Epicenter and how does it relate to Vensim? You probably know that Epicenter is a tool for publishing models, but I want to explain more about how Epicenter works and what are some of its advantages. That'll be really quick. Then I want to show some examples of finished Vensim simulations that run on Epicenter, give you a sense for how they work and what they look like and these different types. And there's going to be three types that I'm going to show. I'm going to show a scenario comparison simulation, a single player game simulation, a multiplayer game simulation, and I'm going to actually, after completing those examples, build all three of those together. So well, not together, but separately, and show you how each of those get built. And you can use that as sort of a starting point for any simulations that you do. I'm also going to talk a little bit about free account access and how you can get that. And we'll wrap up with that. I want to point out today that we're going to be using simple Vensim models to illustrate, but complex models will also work well with Forio Epicenter. All right, let's get started. So Forio Epicenter is a computational platform for hosting models server-side and creating interactive interfaces and then sharing them on web and mobile. The way I like to think about it is it's both an authoring and hosting tool. So you can go online, you can build an interface, online interface to your Vensim model, and then Epicenter will also do the hosting for you. So it'll kind of manage the hosting and it'll be available to your end users who can access your Vensim model via their web browser. In addition to working with simulations from Vensim, it will do statistical analysis, machine learning optimizations, and other analytical models online. And just to give you a little bit of a flavor for that, this is the range of languages that Epicenter supports. So obviously it supports Vensim. It also now supports Ventity. That's an addition we made last summer. It supports other system dynamic simulation packages, but also things like Python and R, Julia. It supports Excel really well. If everything but Visual Basic for Applications is supported in Excel, and then other things that are kind of supported through things like Python, like you can do machine learning, you can do AI, like with things like TensorFlow or Theano. You can do optimization with Groby or say IBM Cplex through Python and so forth. So those can be integrated together too. I've seen people who've done things where they've taken a Vensim model and integrated it with an optimization that runs, like on Cplex through Python and kind of brought those things together. So from here, what I'd like to do is just introduce some examples of some finished simulations that were built with Vensim and Epicenter. Let's take a look at that. Okay, so the first one I want to show you is a scenario planning, or what we call run comparison style simulation. And this was done with a modeler who built a Vensim model for a group in Vietnam to look at AIDS and HIV. And this model represented different regions in Vietnam. Like here you can see Haiphong, and there you can go here to Dien Bien, which is on the western side of Vietnam, and so on, to kind of go back and forth. And the problem historically for this person was that when they were delivering this model in a room in Haiphong, for example, where Vietnamese clinicians and city officials were available, there was a lot of translation that had to go on between him and and these officials. Like in terms of, most of the people who were there spoke English as a second language, and they weren't able to interact directly with the model. As you can see here right off the bat, there's an opportunity for having the models through the interface in multiple languages, which can be helpful for that. But probably more important is the fact that people can interact directly with the model through the interface. They don't have to do that indirectly through a modeling expert who's kind of driving the model. So I'm going to go into this here now and log in as in English. And let's see here. I'm going to put in a username and password. I'm going to log. I don't have to log in. I can go in as a guest, but I'm going to log in with a username and password to show you a little bit about how that works. The first thing it does is establish a baseline, and you can see a baseline run that's run all the way out for the Vensim model. So this is the end of the simulation. I can see a graph of that. I can copy the data to a clipboard for use in Excel or something like that. And then what I can do is create new runs. So if I wanted to go in here, for example, and say I increase my prevention targets and then create, this will be my prevention scenario, I can compare that to my base run and see if I end up with better or worse results. I can also then go in and look at, other results on other pages, drill down into details and look at particular outcomes. There's other pages here where I can look at population, different at-risk populations and graphs kind of showing those performance levels with bar charts and look at different spending levels, for example. There's also this ability to explore the model where I can go backward and forward chaining to see, like new cases are affected by MSM cases, which is affected by other things, and we can kind of backward and forward chain throughout the model. And then finally, there's ability to manage the scenarios that are created, and I can delete them or look at when they were created, that sort of thing. So this style of tool is called a scenario comparison or run comparison simulation, and the reason for that is we are seeing multiple runs on the same graph. And you do this probably in Vensim already. I mean, the Vensim internally has this feature, but of course now what we're doing is providing it through a browser. The second type of simulation I want to share is a single player simulation. And I'm going to show this example here. This is a marketing game done at Harvard Business School. And the idea here is that we're going to do a turn-by-turn based game where students enter decisions and then proceed. So I got a dashboard, and I'm not going to go into the specifics on this, but I'll just show you some pages of it to give you a sense for what it looks like. But it's a game where I can experiment with different marketing strategies and sales strategies and things like that. I'll go ahead and enter some numbers in here just to show you how it works from a student perspective. But the key thing here is that what I'm doing is making a decision, proceeding to the next round, and then seeing results, and then revising my decisions after that. Okay, so now I see I've gone a couple more rounds, and you can kind of see the results here. So that's neat, and it's a basic idea behind turn-based simulations. But another really important part of this is how you can use it for looking at class results for a facilitator or a faculty member. So if I log out of this and I go in for an instructor view, what you can see is a class of students. In this case, there are 62 students in this class. I can see the results for all the students, whether or not they completed the simulation and what scenario they ran. I can sort it by, highest to lowest score. Here's a student who got a high score of 92. I can actually even go in and look at that student's results here and see, like what did they do during the simulation? What were their sort of outcome at the end of the game? And even look at the history of their decisions here so I can see their decision history. So that's really useful for facilitators. And then in addition, sort of see aggregated results for the entire class. So here's a histogram of the score for the entire class of students and so on for different scenarios as well, if there are multiple scenarios in here, which there are in this case. In addition, there's this ability to kind of set up different runs and things like that. And what I want to do later on in this webinar is show you more around how this actually gets built and how you can do this for yourself with your own simulations to kind of create something similar. You can create a facilitator page that manages a group of students who are running the simulation. For my last example for the day, I want to show you a multiplayer game. This is one that was done by MIT, and it's a simple pricing simulation. And we're going to build something similar very quickly later on in the webinar today. But the way this works is I can come in and I can be a player here. I'm going to go in the multiplayer version. I submit, and then the way this one works is you join a table and wait for other people to join. So I'm going to go ahead and join table 232. Okay, there I am in table 232. And now one thing Chrome allows me to do is to sort of pretend to be other people. So this is like a separate web browser now, as if I were on a separate computer. And I'm going to go in again. I'm going to go to multiplayer. I'm going to pretend to be, instead of Michael, I'm going to be my colleague Amrita here and submit. And I can see now Michael on this table 232 is already joined, right, on the previous one. I'm going to join it too. And now we're both playing. And here is Amrita logged in. I'm going to go back to Michael. I can start the game over here. I'll go back to Amrita and have her start the game. So we're both in now, and then we'll set prices. And what you can see here is that everything is priced at $30 right now. Amrita here is going to undercut the prices a little bit by $25 or to $25. whereas Michael is going to stay at 30. We'll both submit, and now the sim is advancing, and you can see the outcome, right? So after everybody submitted, the simulation advances and it continues to the next round. And now what Michael might do is say, well, I'm going to chase her to 25, and then Amrita goes to, let's say, I don't know, 22, and the game kind of progresses that way. So you can see round by round how the game is progressing. And we're going to build something like this again quickly in this short webinar today. But those were the three examples that I wanted to share with you. So Forio Epicenter is built for two different audiences, and this person here kind of represents one of the audiences. So Epicenter supports individual modelers who want to publish their models online. And what this person is meant to illustrate is, modelers who maybe don't have any experience doing HTML, modelers who don't have web design experience, but still want to have a positive sort of screen designed for their students that's going to work well and be functional and things like that. And the way we handle that is we have this tool called the interface builder tool or template tool that's used for creating interfaces in a kind of controlled way that makes sure that the interface design is coherent and works well. But Epicenter also supports teams of people who are collaborating together to create what we think of as high production value interfaces. And I think some of the interfaces that I just shared with you, or maybe all of them actually, would be considered high production value interfaces. And this is where you have a designer who comes in, designs the pages, a modeler who's obviously responsible for building the model logic in Vensim or some other tool like Excel or something. A web developer who's going to build this out using tools that the web developer knows how to use, and QA who's testing the simulation in different browsers. And because there's so many people involved, there'd be a project manager and probably other people too, probably a subject matter expert and so on. So Epicenter can support both of these groups. We can support an individual who just wants to do stuff on her or his own and create a simulation, or we can support a team of people who are coming together who want to work using their own best tools to create simulations within the environment. And I'll show you a little bit about how that works. But what I want to get to next is how do we support these two audiences? And our approach to it is to have a stack of interface technologies. The top of the stack is this tool called Interface Templates, which is kind of a what you see is what you get design tool. And it's easy to use, but the downside to it is that it's less flexible than the tools below it. So if you go down the stack, you have things like Flow.js, which is kind of a HTML markup language that can work with Epicenter and gives you more flexibility in terms of design because you can actually work with an HTML if you like to do that sort of thing. And then below that is Epicenter.js, which is used by professional web developers who use things like React or Angular, if you're familiar with those libraries that are kind of very popular web design tools. And then there's even things below that, like the aggregate and base APIs for Epicenter, which can also get used. So there's this range of things that you can do for different web technologies. And what we're going to do today, because this webinar is fairly short and we're covering three different design development, is we're going to focus on the interface templates at the top of the stack. All right. So let me go to my account here. And here's my account, my Sims account. And what you can see here at the top, I have this create a new project. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And I'm going to start today by creating a run comparison or scenario comparison simulation. So I'm going to call this one, and I'm going to use a storyline for this too. I'm going to try to carry the storyline through all three simulations. And my cover story for this is the scenario comparison electric bike sales sim. And the idea here is we want to predict the sales of electric bikes over the next few months. And we want to run different scenarios where we look at different pricing levels, for example, to see what might happen with that. What you can see here is I typed this in with spaces and capitalization, but the project ID that comes below here, which is a URL, right? It removes the spaces because spaces aren't allowed in a URL, and it also removes the capitalization. So you can see here's the URL for it. It's forio.com/app/sims in this case, and then the actual project name. I have three levels of access that I can allow for too. So the top level, public, means anyone in the world who has the URL can run the simulation through the web interface. They can't access the model. The model's off limits, but they can run the simulation without logging in. The second level is authenticated, which means that it requires end users to log in, so that the end users see a login page and they're required to log in before they can proceed with running the simulation. And the last level is private, meaning only you as the web developer can have access to the simulation. And the purpose of this is so that you can work on the simulation in advance of making it available to end users. For today, what I'm going to do with this first one is use the public access, and for later ones, I'll use authenticated. So let me go ahead and create this project. And now we have the project created, and we see a URL up here that's already ready to go, and I can click on it. But of course, there's nothing in it. So if I click on it, I get this page that says, with the robot, sort of the Forio mascot here, saying the project page you are trying to view is not available, right? Because we need both a model and an interface to have something useful. And if I look in here, if I look at the model folder page, you can see there's no model in here. And if I look at the interface page, there's no interface in here as well. So let me go back to the model page. And what I'm going to do next is go to Vensim. And this is my second model. Let me go to my first one. And here's my model that I'm planning on using today. All right, so here's my model. And it's just a basic diffusion model. And the idea here is I set some, I'm sure many of you are probably, maybe all of you have seen this before, the style of model. But if I look at some graphs on this, you can see the installed base kind of growing over time. You can see total sales kind of following a curve here over time and so forth. And what I can do here is change price. Price is flat right now, but I can change price. I guess I'm assuming a relatively cheap electric bike at $1,000 per bicycle. But this is a basic setup for it. Okay, so Vensim by default saves models as .mdl files. So if I save this, what you'll see is down here on the list, it has text format .mdl file. Epicenter does not allow for .mdl files when you're uploading. You must upload a binary.bmf file. So let me go ahead and do that. I'm going to switch it to binary.bmf, and I'm going to save it in my Vensim webinar folder, which I had done before. So let me save this now. And then I'm going to go back to my folder here. Let's see here. And here you can see it, and here you can see the model that I just saved. It's 257, and it's the same time right now here for the VMF file. Let me try uploading the one that's not a VMF file to show you what happens if I do that. So I'm going to go here, and what I do is I drag the diffusion model into the folder. It's diffusion.mdl, right? So the wrong one, just make sure you're clear on that. I upload it, and I get this message that said, upload failed, bad request. Disallowed extension and path, meaning that the MDL file is not permitted. It's not super friendly error message, but the point is that MDL files do not work with Epicenter, so we put this in here to stop you from, or stop people from uploading .mdl files. So the proper file, or the correct file to use here, that would not correct in the sense of it works with Epicenter, is the VMF file, the diffusion.bnf, or the binary file that Vensim uses. So I'm going to upload that, and that works. So that's great. So I'm ready to go with the model logic that now is in here through the Vensim model. However, I still don't have any interface, so I still have nothing to run. I can create an interface through the interface builder tool. So let me go to that and show you how that works. What you see is when I log in, I go to the interface builder tool, it's asking me for 3 options of different things that I can create. I can do a turn-by-turn based simulation, which we looked at earlier. That was sort of the pricing sim. We can do the turn-by-turn was the marketing simulation. The next one is the multiplayer, which that was the pricing simulation. And the last one is run comparison, which is sort of like the scenario planning one that we did on HIV and AIDS. For this one, what I'm going to do is a run comparison to start off, which is I'm going to be able to fully simulate all the way to the end for each Vensim model, and then compare different runs like we did in this, this model up here, right? So let's go back to that. Okay, so we're going to create a run comparison simulation. And what Epicenter does is it creates some templates and a layout that it thinks is kind of plausible for this style of simulation. And what we get is an introduction page. We have a dashboard, seems reasonable. We have a set of decisions that end users are going to make for each of their scenarios. There's a little scenario button down here where I can name the scenario like I saw before. And there's even a run manager for the scenarios. But none of this is filled out yet. I've got to kind of build out the structure on that. The first thing I probably want to do is create a project title. I can go to header footer settings and name it. I'm going to call this, Mike's electric bike forecaster or something, forecasting tool, let's call it that. Okay, so I've got that in as my name, and I maybe even want to have a header logo here. So let me go ahead and find an image for my header logo. I previously got this logo here that I can use, and I can kind of size it up around the electric bicycle I have here. And then I can select it. Okay, so now if I go back to introduction, I can see that there it looks a little bit better now. They have this beefy electric bicycle with Mike's electric bicycle bike forecasting tool. All right, and then I can say something like, welcome to the simulation. And of course, I don't have to use all these fields, but they're available. I can put some introductory text. So here's my text that I have available, and I'm going to copy this and put this here. So there's my text. I can take out the spaces here, so on. And I also can add media. So if I want to have an image here, for example, or a video, I can place a video in here, and I have a video link that I also saved here. Let me put that in. So this is just a story about the popularity of electric bicycles. There you can see it. And that's a decent introductory page, right? And I should note too here, by the way, that I don't have to do these pages this way. Like I can add other pages and other designs here that are available by add page. So here, for example, if I don't like that text page, there are many other text pages that I could use for a design, and I can choose any one of these and replace it with this one, or even add additional pages, and I can have a very big interfaces. We have people who have built simulations using this tool with dozens, even hundreds of pages in it. But the pages that are available are going to vary by the type of simulation you build. So right now we're doing a run comparison or a scenario comparison simulation. And so the consequence of that is I have run comparison options and run analysis options for different pages that are available in the design, which I can add in here if I want to. All right, but I'm going to stick today with, for the rest of these pages, I'm going to stick with this design because I want to show other features and other sims. But you can see here what's kind of built out here on the dashboard. I have a baseline, which is the baseline run, sort of the default run that comes within the Vensim model. And I can add other pages here. So I can go ahead and create different kinds of charts. I have a limited chart set for the scenario comparison for the run type because I need to be able to do things where I can do run-by-run comparisons. There's only a few types of charts that can support that. A line chart is one of them. And one of the things I might want to show is total sales. So if I go back to my Vensim model here, you can see total sales is down here, and it's sort of a graph like that. That's what it looks like in the Vensim model. And one of the things that Epicenter has is this feature called model introspection. And so what it can do is look inside the Vensim model for variable names, and you can look them up. So if I start typing total here, I can see total sales and click on it. And there's my graph. It looks identical to the graph that was inside of Vensim. And I can do other things here too in terms of formatting and things like that, but I'm gonna leave that alone. I can, add additional ones here too. I might break this out into new sales. And I can look up my new sales variable here, and then maybe add repeat sales, which in my model is called something else. It's called repurchases. There we go. Okay, so there's my repurchases graph. So there, now I have these three kind of totaling up along with this baseline here. And then I need a decision in my model for running that out. I don't have to fill out all of these fields here if I don't like them. I'm just going to do one decision here. So I just click on that. And you can see I have a range of different decisions that I can make, or different styles of decisions for entering things. Common one is a text input. I can do a slider, I can do checkboxes, radio buttons, toggles, buttons, etc., a bunch of things. For right now, I guess I'll do a text input, and this will be my bike price or price. I look at my variable, I think it's called price, there it is, and I can format it as currency, so there it's formatted as currency, and that's kind of enough to get started. So let me go back to the introduction. I'm going to save my interface. I'm going to go to preview, and you can see this running here. Let me turn the sound down on my computer so that I don't get blasted out here. But if I run the video, I can see the video playing, kind of explaining a little bit about the electric bike market. I have my explanation here. I can go to the dashboard. I see the initial results that are running for this along with the baseline. I can go to decisions. I can change my price decision from my model at the beginning of the simulation. And I'm going to say, what if I charged more for my electric bikes? And I'm going to call this high price. And then I'm going to save and simulate. And now I see the high price line beside the baseline, and I can see the difference in terms of behavior. It seems like the total sales is taking longer because the price is higher, the adoption is slower. I can go back again and create another one, which I'm going to say, what if I charge less? Maybe I charge $900. Oops, not 9,000, 900. And I call this my low price scenario and run it out. And here's our third example, right? The yellow line represents low price. And I can turn these off if I want to just compare the high price to a low price, I can do so, or compare the baseline to the high price or the low price, etc. So I can do different kinds of comparisons here. In addition, what I'm also getting is this run manager where if I don't like one of these, say I don't like the low price option, I don't think that's useful, I can remove it. And then I go back to the dashboard and it's no longer even available on here. So that's kind of how these get built. And you can see in just a few minutes, you can create a decent interface. There's a lot more that you can do here too, by the way. You know, if I switch out a preview here, I can do things like, you know, change the themes. There's different themes. If I want to have a darker theme or a lighter theme or a monochromatic theme, I can do so. I can save that, go back to my pages here, and if I look at it, you know, it looks a bit different now. It's kind of a darker look to the overall, you know, simulation design and things like that with different fonts, etc., but are meant to be work together nicely. So that's all I'm going to cover for the moment on scenario comparison. I want to move on to building a single player game with you. So I'm going to go back to Sims now and create a new project. And in this case, I'm going to do my single player bicycle pricing sim game, as I call it. And again, that creates a new URL here. This one, I am going to make this authenticated. So I'm going to create login for this one so you can see how that works. And I'm going to go ahead and create a project. And again, I have an empty or URL that's not functioning yet. I still have a model. Let me show you my model, my Vensim model for this. And again, we're going with our super simple models because we're not focused on the model part. But here's our little model. And what it does is actually, what's interesting about this, we're going to use the same model for the single player and multiplayer. And you can see this model is subscripted. So this model has player P1 and P2. And what we're going to do is ignore P2 for now, and we'll just let P2 sit there, and then we'll make P2 active for the multiplayer version. But what we have here is this ability to set price. And if I look at that, you can see, oh, I have to run it first. Okay, let me do that. But anyway, if I just show you the variable price here, you can see it's set at $2,000 per bicycle, and it's arrayed by player P1 and P2. And then I can have different prices there and see the impact on market share and competitor sales. I'm going to change this from competitor sales just to sales. I like that better. Okay, and let me save that. And what I have to do is save it as a binary file. So let me go ahead and do that. Let me go File, Save As. And switch here to binary, replace it. Okay, there we go. Oh, I must have this open already. Let's see. Okay, there we go. So it's already a VMF file. All right, good. So we go. So let's go back here, and now we need to connect the model up, or bring the model in rather. So I see pricewords.vmf. It's from just a minute ago. I'll drag this over. There's my model. And now I go back to Interface Builder, and this time, instead of building a run comparison simulation, I'm going to build a turn-by-turn based game like I did a moment ago, or like I showed you a little bit ago. So I'm going to click on turn-by-turn based game, and now I have a different set of pages that are available in my simulation. I can still do a header and footer, and I'm going to call this the bicycle pricing game, single player or something. That's what it is. And I'm not going to do a logo this time. I'm going to just keep it moving. I could put text in here and things. I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm just going to go directly to the dashboard, and I'm going to create a graph of, let's say, sales. Okay, so I want to have sales on one graph here, and I choose my data variables. I can look up the sales variable that I just created. Now notice that sales is arrayed. It's arrayed by P1 and P2 in the Vensim model. And in this case, what I want to do is pretend I'm always the first array element, or P1. So I'm going to go ahead and select P1 here. And because I'm at the beginning, it's no longer simulating all the way through. It's just showing the beginning point. Because it's at the very beginning of the simulation, I can't see that dot. So what I need to do to fix that is add enable markers. And now I can see sort of the dot up here for the 5,000 in sales that I'm getting at the beginning. And this industry has 10,000 units that are available. And so, because the prices are the same, it's kind of splitting it evenly at the beginning here. But I can also do a market share chart to do that. Usually market share is presented with a pie chart. So let's use a pie chart today, and I'm going to call this market share. And then what I can do is put in my market share variable for P1. If I only include market share P1, it's just a big dot, not very interesting. So I need to add another variable, which is going to be market share P2. And then now I have sort of an interesting plot where I have P1 and P2 market share 50-50 at the beginning of the simulation. And I also might want to have different reports in here as well that's going to help me um, learn more about the simulation. Maybe I want to have financial statements, maybe something around how price is changing, that sort of thing. I don't want to always build everything on a single page, right? So, and again, this is how you build more elaborate interfaces. So what I'm going to do now is go back to pages and add a couple new pages in. And I want to also illustrate this feature that Epicenter has, which is you don't have to take every element from every page and try to use it. Like, you might say, oh, I want to use I have 5 graphs, not 6. You can still use this page and just not fill in the last one, and it'll work just fine. Or you can even do a page like this, let's say, that has some text and a graph above it, but it has a table, but you may only want to use the table. So I'm going to actually use this one today. I'm going to call this my income statement. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK on that. And for my income statement, what I want to do is just use a table. I don't really want these elements. I'm just going to ignore them. So I'm going to hit Add Table, and then I have 2 table types. I have a financial table and a data table. And what I want to do today is build kind of an income statement or financial table, which means that the variables will appear in the left column in rows along the left column, and then the table will build from left to right with the years kind of appearing in each of the column headers. So that's what I'm going to do here. And I'm going to create the first one, which is going to be revenue. I'm going to select my variable, which is revenue P1, right? And then I can set up the number format for it. You can see right now the number format over here is not great. It's hard to read. I can't even tell what it is. So what I'm going to do is format it as pound, comma, pound, oops, $pound, comma, pound, 0. That's a much better formatting. It's 10 million now. And I'm going to add another line or row to my financial table, which will be costs. And that I'm going to select as costs, I think, cost P1. And I'm going to add the same formatting to that. Notice it remembers the format from last time, so I can keep using it. And then lastly, I'm going to put in profit. And I'll look up my profit variable. I think it's here. It's P1 again. And this one, actually, I'd like to have a line under it. That's kind of the tradition, right? So I'll do a total line here and then format this the same way. Okay, so there I go. I've got this kind of laid out here. And this is going to be my report for my financial report or my income statement. All right, let's go back to pages here. I have this income statement ready, but actually it doesn't appear in the menu right now because I haven't included it yet. Let me add one more page. This time what I'm going to do is put a page in like this, where I have, because I want to have a big graph. I'm going to ignore the table this time, and I'm going to call this my pricing page, or my prices, I guess. I'll go ahead and hit OK. And what I want to do with this is just show something about how prices are changing over time. And I'll put in the 2 variables here. I'll put price P1 and another one, which is going to be price P2. So now I have those laid out, and I'm going to also add these enable markers so I can see the markers about where it's starting off. Now this, interestingly, is 2K, but really what I want to be able to do is show it in dollars because this is in prices, right? So what I want to do is format that y-axis, and I can do that here with number format, and I'll use this format for it. So this is going to look a little bit better for what I'm trying to show here. Okay. Lastly, what I want to do is add some decisions, and I'm going to put a decision in here for a text input. I'll put prices again, and I'll select the variable price, P1, because that's what I'm using right now, and I'll format that like currency, so it'll be in $2,000. And I've kind of got enough set up. But I still have this problem, which is I don't have these reports or these pages inside of my navigation. I've got report, but I'm actually not using this one. I've got a dashboard, which I like. So this needs to be fixed. And the way I do that is I go to navigation settings. I'm going to click on that. And first thing I'm going to do is delete the report because I don't want this one anymore. I'm not using this for anything. And then I'm going to add a drop-down menu instead. So instead of a navigation item, I'm adding a drop-down menu. I'm going to call this drop-down menu reports, and I'm going to add a sub-navigation item. I can also add a sub-menu, so I can have nested menus if I want, but I'm going to add sub-navigation here. I'm going to call this my income statement. And then I'm going to link this to the income statement that I created. I'm going to add another sub navigation item, which is the pricing report. and that is going to be, I think I called it prices. There we go. Okay, and now this is appearing at the bottom of this list. And what I want to do is put it a little bit higher. I'm going to put it above the decisions, but below the dashboard. Now, if I go back to my pages, I can see the new layout, right? So I've got my introduction, I've got my dashboard, I've got reports. If I click on it, I see the income statement, and I see the pricing report that are available within the simulation as well as decisions. And I'm ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save. I go back to introduction, go to preview, see the report, go to the dashboard, see the starting point. I go to my decisions, and again, I'm just playing P1 now, right? So I can go in here and put in a number. I simulate, and I can see it advancing. Let me put in a higher number this time, see what happens. And I can see kind of things advancing through. I got an error here for something. What did I do wrong? Oh, I'm going to go to that. But I can keep advancing through round by round in the simulation as things kind of work out. So that's kind of how that works. Actually, you know what? I think I made a mistake. This is actually a good thing to show. It sort of illustrates some of the problems that you're going to have sometimes. And what I did here, I think, is I forgot to save this as a gaming variable. And actually, I did this intentionally, but I forgot I did it intentionally until just now. So, but it's actually a good catch because this is the kind of thing that frequently happens in model building when you're kind of going through this. So let me show you the mistake I think I made, and we'll see if that's true or not. Yeah, so I did make a mistake here. So here again, and this is anyway. So this is super useful for thinking about how to build these out. So in Vensim, the way that you change variables while the simulation is running is use gaming variables, and probably many of you are familiar with that concept. So if I click on price here, I change it to auxiliary. Auxiliary normal won't do anything special, but I can change it to something called gaming. So I do auxiliary gaming, and what that allows me to do is change the value of an auxiliary as the simulation is running. And that's exactly what we want to do for this style of gaming interface where we're kind of advancing and then making decisions and things like that. So it must be set up that way to solve that. And that's what caused that error message that I saw a moment ago and why the behavior of the model didn't change. So I'm glad I caught that. I'm going to go ahead and save it again. And then I can show you how to fix things, which is a common thing that happens when you're building models like this. And I need to go back to model. And there's my 3:10 p.m. BMF file. I go back here and I see the new one, which is 3:19, 9 minutes later. And I'm updating it. And so now I have the new model with 3:19. I go back to Interface Builder and everything should be ready to go still. I go back to preview and I should, it should all work now. So let's try it again. I have 5,000. I go to decisions. I'm going to drop the price now with the fixed model with the gaming variable. And now it's set at this lower amount, and then I can, experiment with what if I, well, let's go back. So just to see this here, so my market share went up a little bit, and on the income statement here, I can see, that has changed as well. So, so that's kind of how that all works here, and you can see it kind of advancing round by round for the different levels here. So one other thing I want to do here before I wrap up is provide a login so I can see how all this stuff works and then use it as an authenticated account. So I set this up as an authenticated account here. And the way I'm going to do that is by creating a facilitator interface. And you can see that at the top here. So the options are you can do the regular student user interface or front-end user interface. You can also do a back-end facilitator interface like we saw in some of the other examples. And this has, again, different things that are set up, and I can do class results. And what I might want to do with class results is add a column and show, for example, time. I want to see what time they're in. The number, and I might want to add another column here, which is going to be, I think I have cumulative profit in this model. So let me add that in as a variable, cum profit for P1, I guess, in this case. I want to format that as a $, pound, comma, pound, pound, 0. There we go. So I want to add that column as well. So I have cum profit and time in here. Actually, I added a third one. I didn't mean to. And then I might also want to do something with class settings where I can set things up for that class. And let me show you the model again. Here I have price sensitivity, and what I want to do maybe is change the price sensitivity for my entire class of students. Not, it's not controlled by the students, it's controlled by the faculty member, and they're changing this as affecting the entire class. So I have this, my price sensitivity here is set to 1, but it could range maybe from 0.5 to 3 or something like that. And I want to use that here where the facilitator or faculty can set it and then alter that for the entire class of students who are playing. So let me go ahead and do that. I'll call this my price sensitivity. And I'm going to put that in as the variable price sensitivity, I think. There it is. And I'll format this as, again, with my own formatting. There we go. So it's a kind of 1.0 effect. And now I can apply these settings down here. I can even also set a run limit if I want to, which is nice. Okay, so I've got enough going on here right there. I'm going to go ahead and save this, go back to my project homepage. And from here, what I want to do is create groups. So now what I want to do is be able to create a class and assign students into that class. And there's multiple ways to kind of get students in. But the first step is I need to create a class that's going to be able to run this in the authenticated mode. So I hit add group and I put in a name of a group. I'm going to call this my webinar test group or something. And I have a start date and an expiration date for that class. If I take this out, it will never expire. So these accounts will always be available. I'm going to do that for this one right now. And then I create the group. And now I have a group, but I have no users. So I need to add users to the group. I'm going to hit end users. And I have 3 different ways to add users here. I can either add them individually. I can upload a template to get a bunch in. Or I can have end users self-register, which is a nice feature. You can just give them a URL and then they can set up their own accounts on their own. So, if I wanted to create a facilitator account, I can do it here. I can do Forio Fac as my account name. Let me go ahead and do that. And I actually used this before, so it recognizes it and knows my password already. So it's kind of in this account already. So I've got that set up. And then I can also go back and add maybe, so this is my facilitator account that I just set up. But I can also go back and add multiple end users. And I would upload them here. What I need to do before I upload them is have a template that shows me how to do so. And so here's my template. Okay, well, go to File, Save. Let's try it one more time. Back to the group list, hit Add Users, Upload Users. It's a bit embarrassing. There we go. Okay, got it in. And now you can see in my group list, I have a bunch of users here, and they've never logged into the simulation before. Okay. So now what I can do is use this for running the simulation. Let me go to Run Project here. I'm going to copy the link address and go, elsewhere here, create a new place to run. And what I want to do is go back and remember one of these usernames. Let me do user 1 here and log in. And I can see the dashboard and these different reports available for the user. Go to decisions, change price like we saw before, submit, and so on. And I can keep going to the end. Let me do this a few times. I can't remember how many steps are in this model. There might be 10 or something. I don't need to finish it, but I'm going to just run it out a little bit. Okay, that's far enough. It's not very interesting, but I gain a little bit of market share here. So let me log out. Now I'm going to re-log in the same account with the facilitator. And I have to go back and remember what the facilitator account is. So it's Forio Fac here. There we go. And I'm in. I can now see class results. And I see, user 00 ran to time 6. And like I could in the other one, I can even view this user and see, what this user did. So I see the outcome to time 6 and the reports and the income statement and things like that, like what happened as the user proceeded with that in here. So that's a really nice way to kind of see what's going on in the interface here. All right. And there's other settings that I could do here as well. For example, if I want to do things like change the setup for it and things like that, I can do that as well. Let me go back to that actually to illustrate that. So let's see, I need to go back to the login. And I could do the settings here where I can set up a different price sensitivity and apply that to the entire group for people running from now on, so running forward. I can also view the users, and I have the ability here even from the facilitator page, which is separate from Epicenter. So this is good if you're providing this to faculty that you don't, to other people where you want them to create their own classes, but you don't want them to have access to your Epicenter account. You can create upload users, and they can use an Excel template in the same way, but copy and paste that template in to kind of create additional users through this interface instead of the Epicenter interface, if that makes sense. All right, good. All right, so we've got that working, kind of illustrate a little bit around the facilitator accounts and the student accounts. And from here, what I'm going to do is move into my final example, which is multiplayer, building a multiplayer game. And we're going to use the same model we have here because it's arrayed again, because we have these subscripts P1 and P2 that are set up. And we're just going to, this time, apply it so each of the subscripts represents a different player in the game. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my Sims account and create a new project. And I'm going to call this my multiplayer, my bike, let's call it bike game pricing multiplayer. There we go. And I'm going to use authenticated again. I must use authenticated if I have a multiplayer game because the platform needs to recognize who the different players are in each world, right? So I can have multiple worlds in here. So I'm going to go ahead and create the project. And my model has already been fixed, so I don't need to do that again. I'm just going to re-upload my price wars model. All right, so I'm going to re-upload it. There it is. And now I'm going to go back to Interface Builder. And in the previous times, I selected run comparison and turn by turn. This time I'm selecting multiplayer to build my simulation. Let me go ahead and do that. And it's noting here that I've made some changes. So it automatically updated some of the configuration files for me to make it possible to do multiplayer. So it's enabled multiplayer. It's enabled something called the push channel, which synchronizes the state between different screens online. If you're in one location, I'm in another, then it will sync the screens together with the decisions that are being made and so forth. So I'm going to go ahead and continue with that. And the next thing it asked me to do is define the roles for my project. And there's different ways to do this. For arrayed models in Vensim, the typical way to do it is to use the array elements that are defined in the Vensim model. And again, what we have in here for the subscripts, for this one, it's the player array, and it's got subscripts P1 and P2, okay? So what we want to put in here is P1 and P2, and those are the two array elements that we're going to use to define the players in this game. Okay, and now you can see some new elements that have been added in here. We've got P1 at the top, and we can kind of flip around to those if we want P1 and P2. And we can create the screens again. Let me go to header footer settings. I'm going to call this multiplayer bike game. I'm going to, you know what, I'll put the image in since I'm doing this final one here just to be fancy. All right, there we go. There's our nice bike image. So it's in the introduction. I say welcome to the game. All right, now we go to the dashboard, and here we're going to do things a little bit differently. And this is partly why I want to do the single player and multiplayer against each other, because I wanted to show you kind of how this works and how it compares to doing single player here, right? So I might want to plot out what my sales are over time. So let me do that. I'm going to call this my sales. And so I want is regardless of the viewer, I want to show, like if I'm logged in as player 1, I want to see player 1 sales. If I'm logged in as player 2, I want to see player 2 sales on this page without creating an entire new page per player. That would be really a hassle, especially if you had, say, an 8-player game or something, right? You'd be over and over again creating the same style of pages for each one and be a mess. So the way we handle that is we can go to data variables, we can look up sales, and you can see now we have a new variable that's available in the multiplayer version that says sales user role. So I can click on this. Okay, so I've got my sales in here, and what I want to do is add enable markers. I can see the marker again for 5,000. I might want to show market share again. Let me do that. Market share. And for here, what I'm going to do is add the variable market share P1. Now, in this case, I don't want to do the user role because I want to show market share for everybody. That's what I'm really interested in. So here I'm going to show both of them. In this case, there's only 2. And then maybe below here, I want to show a bar chart that shows prices. So I can do that here. And again, I probably want to show both of them. So I'm going to do price 1 add another variable, which is price 2. And then what the other thing I want to do here is I want it to only show for the current time period. So I can filter data and say the number of data points to show, the number of rounds to show in a single graph is 1. So that's going to limit it to 1. And I can do some other things here too. What if I want to eliminate the axes and things like that, and hide the axis line? And this is going to clean this up a little bit. And then the number format for the x-axis should be, there we go. We'll just do it that way. All right, good. All right, so there's our 3. Now I want to go to decisions. And here, what I want to do for decisions is set the decision so it's going to depend on the view again, kind of like we did last time. So I want to do decisions for price. And what I'm going to do here is select price, user role. And I'm going to format that with a currency. And then lastly, what I want to do is when I hit simulate, in this case, what I want to have happen is that everybody has to enter their decision before the simulation advances. So I'm going to do this thing that's called require consensus. And if I click on that, it's going to advance the simulation to the next round. So everybody needs to enter their decisions. Both P1 and P2 need to enter decisions to proceed. And I have my interface together. The last step I want to do is, well, I want to save it. I want to switch the user interface to the facilitator user interface. And what I'm going to do with this one is use it mainly for creating, for uploading users and kind of creating teams and things like that. So I'm not going to bother with the rest of these settings here. And what I'm going to do from here is go back, and I need to now create the teams. Now notice what it's done here is it's made some settings for me based on how I've set this up. So it's got multiplayer settings already in place. It's enabled. We're not allowing users to self-assign, so you can have self-assignment, but we're not doing that. And it's P1 and P2 are the group names here. So this is kind of built for us automatically behind the scenes. But now what I'm going to do is create a new group, and I'm going to call this my multiplayer team, or multiplayer class. Let's call it that. I have an expiration here 6 months out. I guess that's okay. I'm going to go ahead and create group. And now I'm going to add in users. In this case, this time I'm only going to add the Forio FAQ user, because I'm going to use that to create the other teams here automatically. So here I go. I'm going to go ahead and create that. And I only currently have this Forio FAQ inside my, my account. So now let me copy this link address and go to go here. And let's do it over here. Let's do it on this page. Okay, so now I'm going to log in. It's Forio FAQ 001. And log in. So now I'm into the class here. I can see the class results, and no one's played it yet, right? I have no results in here. And I have actually no users in here. There's no users registered right now. So what I need to do is first off upload users. And the way I would do that is download this Excel template again. So here's my template, and I can put in different information here. I'm going to put mplayer01. And the first name is going to be, you know what, I'm going to do this the same way. I'm going to do mplayer01, mplayer01, and then the password is going to be the same. I'm just going to make them all the same to make my life easy here. And I'll have 8 players here. Okay. And now I'm just going to copy this like that, and then I go back here and I can just paste it in. So there it is. And I hit upload users, and these were created successfully and they're set up. So now what I need to do, I have all these users in here, but they're unassigned. They have no roles assigned to them. And I can do this one by one if I want to, or I can do automatically assign users. And what it's going to do is allocate users across the different worlds here. And if I want to, I can move them around. I can say, okay, I want, you know, player, so you can see player 2 is playing with player 1 here. That's, excuse me, player one is playing with player 5. Okay, well, that's all right. I can make that work. And so on. So let me go here now to log in for each of these. I'll create 2 of these. Other one is player for this world. As you can see, they're both in the same world, world 2, and player 5 is the other one that's paired with them. Let me go here, put this in, and log in. And so now we're playing against each other. I can say, welcome to the game. I look at the dashboard, I can see my kind of starting sales, and we're kind of balanced out between these two. I don't have any report in here. If I go to decisions, I see 2,000. So player 5 here is going to enter 1,500. Okay. And the other player here, they're going to enter in 1,000. So that's 10,000. Okay, let's do 1,000. So this player should win the game. So I'm going to go ahead and hit simulate here. And it's saying player 1 is played, but the other one has not submitted yet. So the other one has to submit before the game will advance. So let me go ahead and do that. And now both have advanced. So now you can see player 1 has gained, or player 2 has gained market share over player 1 in the game because of the lower price that they set. So now we can go to another decision here in this round, and I'm going to change my price. This time I'm going to set it to 3,000 for player 5, and then I go to the other one, and I'm going to change this one to 2,500. We'll run it again. And we can kind of see how sales have changed and the market share has changed, the consequence. And here's the price for this round that's occurred. And that's kind of how that works. And now if I log out and log in as the facilitator again, what did I call my facilitator? Kind of have to go back and look. Let's see here. It's Forio Fac. There we go. I've accumulated as the simulation. I have to get to the end of the simulation. You can see class results are there. I can see that the players who are online and what's going on with them right now, they're offline because they stopped playing, but they have been advancing through the simulation at this point. So that's the basic design. And that covers the 3 examples that I wanted to share with you today, doing both a scenario planning tool, a turn-by-turn play single player asynchronous simulation, and a multiplayer game. And for the last 2, I also included how to create these facilitator accounts. The last thing I wanted to do is just as a reminder for today is show you a little bit around what you need to remember when you're getting started using Epicenter. So you need to remember to upload a VMF file, which is the binary file, not the model or text file, because the vensim.mdl file won't work, but the VMF file will. And also, as I clearly illustrated, you should use user decisions must be either initial constants or gaming variables. And for turn-by-turn based games or multiplayer games, they must be gaming variables. So again, that's auxiliary gaming variable to make that work. Lastly, I just want to show some resources that are available for helping you build these on your own. And you can do so through our support forum. So let me show you where our support forum is. If you go to forio.com/epicenter, up here on the top, you can see our support forum, and this will give you the ability to kind of discuss different topics. If you have questions about things, you can ask them up here and you'll get an answer. In addition, there is documentation available. If you click on, let me show that again, the documentation link up here, and you can search through it. You can look at different things, including writing your model. And here there's an explanation of how Vensim works that kind of summarizes some of the things I've discussed today. And then lastly, there'll be additional webinars that are available as well. If you have any questions about this, you can ask them on the support forum. And if you want to create an account, you can go to forio.com/epicenter/register, or just forio.com/register, and then put in your information, and you'll be able to create a free account. And in the free account, you'll be able to create public and private simulations, but not authenticated. So you won't be able to do multiplayer games with the free account. And we have relatively, I think, inexpensive options available for the for-pay account. And you can find out more about those by going to forio.com and go to Epicenter, and then look on for the pricing information here. Thanks very much, and good luck building interfaces to your Vensim models.